The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Every screen on Earth lit up at once, broadcasting the same image. A massive fleet of alien ships emerging from what looked like tears in space itself. Humanity had dreamed of first contact for centuries, but not like this. Not with 10,000 warships pointing their weapons at Earth. Commander James Stone stood at the United Nations Emergency Command Center, his weathered face illuminated by the glow of massive screens. 25 years in the military hadn't prepared him for this moment. The alien ships were unlike anything humans had ever imagined. They looked like liquid metal frozen in space, their surfaces rippling with strange lights. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, a young technician announced, her voice shaking. The message, it's in English. They call themselves the Galactic Council. The main screen flickered to life, showing a creature that looked almost like living crystal. Its voice resonated through the speakers, each word precise and cold. Humanity, we have observed your species for the past century. We regret to inform you that you have been classified as a level 5 threat to galactic peace. Stone's fists clenched. He had expected many things from first contact, but not this. Not judgment before conversation. The alien continued. Your species shows concerning traits: aggressive expansion, rapid technological advancement, and most worryingly, an unstable combination of innovation and warfare. The Council has voted. Earth will be placed under quarantine until your species evolves past its violent tendencies. Protests erupted across the command center. Stone remained silent, watching as more ships appeared. They were positioning themselves in a perfect sphere around Earth's solar system. Your containment begins now. Any attempt to breach the quarantine will be met with immediate response. This is not a punishment, but a necessity for galactic stability. The Council has spoken. The next few hours were chaos. World leaders demanded negotiations. Scientists tried to understand the technology behind the alien ships. Military commanders from every nation planned desperate attacks. But Stone knew better. He had studied enough history to recognize a superior force exercising its power. The barrier appeared slowly, a shimmering wall of energy that started at the edge of the solar system and worked its way inward. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, like watching a spider weave a web around its prey. Stone walked to the window, looking up at the night sky. The stars were different now, distorted by the energy barrier forming above. A junior officer approached him, holding a tablet displaying global reactions. Sir, we're getting reports from all over. Panic in major cities. Religious groups claiming it's the end times. But there's something else. The officer paused, unsure. Go on, Stone said, his eyes still fixed on the changing sky. People are angry, sir. Not scared. Angry. Factory workers in Detroit are already trying to reverse engineer alien tech from the broadcast images. A group of students in Mumbai claims they've detected patterns in the barrier's energy signature. Farmers in Brazil are organizing to increase food production, preparing for isolation. Stone finally smiled. This was humanity at its core, facing impossible odds with determination instead of despair. The next day, as the barrier completed its formation, the Galactic Council sent its final message. The quarantine is complete. Your system will be monitored. We hope that in time, you will understand this is for the greater good. But they had made a crucial mistake. They hadn't crushed humanity's spirit. They had given it a focus. In their attempt to cage humanity, they had forgotten a fundamental truth. Humans had always performed best with their backs against the wall. In his private office, Stone wrote the first entry in what would become a historic document. Day 1 of quarantine. They think they've imprisoned us. They don't realize they've just united us. For the first time in human history, we face a common situation that affects every nation, every person. They expect us to devolve into chaos. Instead, we will evolve. They call us aggressive. We'll show them what human aggression really means. They fear our innovation. We'll give them reason to fear. They've locked us in here with our determination, our resources, and most dangerously, our spite. They think this is our prison. We'll turn it into our fortress. Outside his window, the stars continued to shimmer strangely through the barrier, like a challenge waiting to be answered. Humanity had been abandoned by the galaxy, but in that abandonment, they would forge something the Galactic Council never expected: unity with a purpose. The war hadn't started yet, but the first shot had been fired, not with weapons, but with a simple act of judgment. And humanity would make sure the galaxy regretted that judgment. 10 years passed like a slow burn. Earth had changed in ways that would have seemed impossible before the quarantine. The old borders that had divided nations faded as humanity faced its greatest challenge: survival under isolation. Dr. Anna Reed walked through her underground laboratory, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The facility stretched for miles, filled with the hum of machines and the quiet determination of Earth's brightest minds. Her team worked tirelessly on Project Dawn, humanity's answer to the alien barrier. "Doctor, you need to see this," called out Mark, her lead assistant. He stood before a massive screen showing energy readings from their latest test. The dark matter reactor. It's stable. Anna couldn't help but smile. 10 years of work was finally showing results. What had started as a desperate attempt to understand the alien barrier had led to humanity's greatest scientific breakthrough. The aliens had meant to stop human progress. Instead, they had focused it like a laser. Above ground, the world had transformed. Cities now stretched underground and underwater, expanding humanity's living space without breaking the quarantine. Massive farms covered the deserts, turned green by advanced hydroponics. But the biggest changes were in space. Commander Stone, now Admiral Stone, stood on the observation deck of Luna Base 1, watching Earth rotate slowly below. His hair had gone completely gray, but his eyes held the same fire they had 10 years ago. The moon's surface was dotted with structures, factories, training facilities, and most importantly, shipyards. "Status report," he ordered, not turning from the window. "The Phantom Fleet is ready, sir," reported Captain Wells. 15 ships, all equipped with the new quantum drives. They're invisible to all known detection methods. Stone nodded. The ships were beautiful in a deadly way. Sleek black vessels designed to slip through space like shadows. They were humanity's first real warships, built in secret using technology that would have seemed like magic a decade ago. And the crew. "All volunteers, sir. The best we have. They've trained for 5 years in the asteroid bases. They're ready." Stone finally turned from the window. The room was filled with holographic displays showing different aspects of Earth's preparation. One screen showed the massive space elevator in Africa. Another displayed the underwater cities in the Pacific. Each achievement was a middle finger raised to the aliens who thought they could cage humanity. Back in her lab, Anna studied the final test results. The dark matter reactor wasn't just stable. It was revolutionary. It could punch holes through space itself, creating corridors through the alien barrier. But more importantly, it could do it without being detected. "Send word to Admiral Stone," she ordered. "Project Dawn is ready." The message traveled through quantum channels, impossible to intercept. Within hours, leaders from the Earth Defense Initiative gathered in the deep bunker beneath Geneva. The old United Nations building had been converted into a museum, a reminder of the day everything changed. Admiral Stone stood before the assembled leaders, his voice firm. 10 years ago, they thought they were locking us in a cage. Instead, they locked themselves out of the greatest military buildup in human history. The holographic display showed their achievements. Hidden bases throughout the solar system. A fleet of ships more advanced than anything humanity had dreamed of before the quarantine. Weapons that could tear apart space itself. But most importantly, it showed the barrier's weak points. Places where Dr. Reed's technology could punch through undetected. "The Galactic Council expects us to be fighting among ourselves," Stone continued. "They expect us to have regressed, turned on each other. Instead, We've evolved. United. Prepared. He touched a control, and the display showed their first target, a monitoring station just outside the barrier. In 1 week, we launch Operation First Light. We'll show them what humanity can do when backed into a corner. The room erupted in determined approval. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about proving humanity's worth, about showing the galaxy that their judgment had been wrong. In her lab, Anna watched the final preparations. The dark matter reactors were being installed in the Phantom Fleet. Soon, humanity would remind the galaxy of an important lesson. Never cage something you don't fully understand. The silent decade was ending. The time for action had come. The Defiant hung silent in space, its black hull absorbing every trace of light. Captain Robert Gray stood on the bridge, watching the alien barrier shimmer before them. After 10 years of preparation, everything came down to this moment. Dark matter reactor at full power, reported his engineering officer, ready to create the breach on your command. Gray took a deep breath. 15 ships of the Phantom Fleet were positioned around the solar system, ready to make coordinated jumps through the barrier. Each ship carried Earth's best soldiers, scientists, and enough firepower to level a small moon. Begin the breach sequence, Gray ordered. Dr. Reed's technology worked perfectly. A small hole appeared in the barrier, barely visible to the naked eye. The Defiant slipped through like a needle through cloth, leaving no trace of its passage. For the first time in a decade, a human ship entered free space. We're through, Gray announced quietly. The bridge crew remained silent, professional, but their eyes shone with triumph. Status of the Council monitoring station. Still no sign they've detected us, or their sensors are pointed toward the barrier, not away from it. This was the discovery that had changed everything. The Council's arrogance. They were so confident in their barrier that they barely monitored the space around it. Their monitoring stations were designed to catch humans trying to break out, not ships that had already escaped. The Defiant moved closer to the nearest monitoring station. It looked like a crystal flower floating in space, beautiful but alien. As they approached, their sensors detected something unexpected. "Captain," called the sensor officer, "I'm picking up other containment zones. Dozens of them, spread across this sector of space." Gray's eyes narrowed. "Show me." The main screen filled with data. The Council hadn't just quarantined Earth. They had imprisoned multiple species across the galaxy. Each barrier sphere contained a different civilization, all judged too aggressive or evolutionarily unstable. "Send the data back to Admiral Stone," Gray ordered, "and begin scanning the nearest containment zone." Hours later, the Defiant made another breakthrough. The nearest quarantine zone contained a species called the Runners, trapped like humanity for showing too much potential. Using Dr. Reed's technology, they established first contact. The Runners' response was immediate and enthusiastic. They had been imprisoned for 30 years, and like humans, they had spent their time preparing. Their technology had developed along different lines than humanity's, but it was equally advanced. Over the next week, as the rest of the Phantom Fleet slipped through breaches around the solar system, humanity made contact with 5 more imprisoned species. Each one had a similar story: judged, condemned, and abandoned by the Galactic Council. Back on the Luna base, Admiral Stone received the reports with grim satisfaction. "They didn't just give us enemies to fight," he told his staff. "They gave us allies." The Alliance of the Abandoned formed quickly. Each species brought unique strengths. The Runners had mastered stealth technology. The Crystal Mines were experts in energy weapons. The Deep Dwellers had perfected submarine warfare tactics that translated brilliantly to space combat. On the Defiant, Captain Gray hosted the first secret meeting of Alliance commanders. Representatives from 7 species gathered in the ship's conference room, each bringing their own tales of imprisonment and plans for revenge. "The Council thinks they're protecting the galaxy from us," Gray told the assembled aliens. "They don't realize they've created their own worst nightmare. Together, we have the technology, the motivation, and most importantly, the element of surprise. The Alliance leaders agreed on a bold plan. Instead of attacking the Council directly, they would begin a shadow war, free other imprisoned species, disrupt supply lines, gather intelligence, build their strength. They thought they could break our spirits by isolating us, Gray said as the meeting ended. Instead, they forced us to become stronger than they could imagine, and they did it to every species they feared. As the Defiant prepared to return to Earth with the first Alliance treaties, Gray looked at the barrier that had imprisoned his people. Soon, it wouldn't just be humanity breaking free. Every imprisoned species would rise together, united by their shared abandonment. The chains were breaking, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Council supply ship never saw what hit it. One moment it was cruising through normal space. The next it was drifting powerless, its cargo holds empty. No alarms had sounded. No distress signals had been sent. It was as if the shadows themselves had swallowed its cargo. Admiral Marcus Wells watched from the bridge of the human stealth ship Thunder as the runner vessels disappeared with the stolen supplies. 6 months into the Shadow War, and the Alliance had perfected the art of invisible warfare. Another clean hit, his tactical officer reported. That's the 15th supply ship this month. The Council still thinks they're dealing with space pirates. Wells smiled. The Council's arrogance was their greatest weakness. They couldn't imagine that their imprisoned species could reach them, so they looked for other explanations for their losses. Deep in Alliance territory, hidden between the quarantine zones, humanity had built something remarkable. The massive space station Freedom's Point served as the headquarters for their hidden war. Ships from 7 different species docked there regularly, sharing technology and planning strikes. Dr. Reed walked through the station's main laboratory, surrounded by aliens working side by side with human scientists. The crystal mines had shared their energy weapon designs. The runners had taught them advanced stealth technology. Every species brought something unique to the fight. The Council's latest security codes, a crystal mine scientist said, handing her a data crystal, downloaded from their supply ship's computer core before we disabled it. Reed nodded. Each raid gave them more than just supplies. It gave them intelligence. The Council's entire network was slowly being mapped, their secrets exposed one data core at a time. Back on the Thunder, Admiral Wells received an urgent message from one of their deep cover agents. The Council was finally starting to suspect something bigger than pirates. They were sending a major battle fleet to patrol the supply routes. Perfect, Wells said, studying the fleet's projected course. That's exactly what we wanted. The Alliance had been preparing for this. While the Council focused on protecting their supply lines, they would strike somewhere else entirely. The Thunder sent coded messages to the entire Alliance fleet. Operation Blindside was about to begin. 3 days later, as the Council's battle fleet patrolled empty space, the Alliance struck. 30 ships, human, runner, crystal mind, and deep dweller, appeared simultaneously at different points across Council space. Their targets weren't military bases or supply ships. They were targeting something far more valuable. Data centers. The Council's arrogance had left their information networks vulnerable. They never expected anyone to reach their core worlds, so their security was focused outward, not inward. On Freedom's Point, Dr. Reed worked with alien computers experts to sort through the stolen data. What they found confirmed their suspicions. The Council wasn't just imprisoning species out of fear. They were systematically suppressing any civilization that might one day challenge their power. Look at this, she told the gathered Alliance leaders. Records going back thousands of years. Every time a species shows too much potential, they quarantine them. They'd done it hundreds of times. Captain Gray, now commanding the Alliance's joint fleet, studied the data. They're not protecting galactic peace, he said. They're maintaining their control. And they're not just afraid of our weapons or our aggression. They're afraid of our independence. The Shadow War escalated. Alliance ships began appearing and disappearing across Council space, striking without warning. Supply ships vanished. Communication networks mysteriously failed. Strange weapons unlike anything the Council had seen before damaged their ships without leaving traces. But the most dangerous attacks weren't the ones that destroyed ships or stole supplies. The most dangerous attacks were the ones that freed other imprisoned species. One by one, the quarantine barriers began to fail, each newly freed species joining the Alliance. In the Council's grand meeting chamber, the alien leaders finally admitted they faced a crisis, but they still didn't understand the true scale of their problem. They thought they were facing scattered resistance from a few escaped prisoners. They didn't realize they had created something much more dangerous, a united force of species who had spent years or decades preparing for war, each bringing their own unique technologies and tactics to the fight. The Shadow War was about to become something much bigger. The Council had sown the seeds of their own destruction, and the harvest was approaching. The human battleship Prometheus hung in the darkness of space, its massive hull reflecting no light. It was the biggest ship humanity had ever built, and until now, its very existence had been a closely guarded secret. Admiral Stone stood on its bridge, watching as hundreds of Alliance ships gathered around them. "All ships report ready," his communications officer announced. "The runner stealth screen is active. The Council's barrier control station has no idea we're here." Stone nodded. After months of shadow warfare, the time had come for the first open battle. Their target was the massive station that controlled the quarantine barriers, the same technology that had kept them prisoner for so long. "Send the signal," Stone ordered. "Begin Operation Daybreak." The battle began with silence. Crystal mine ships fired their energy weapons through gaps in space created by human dark matter technology. The barrier control station's outer defenses disappeared without a sound, vaporized by weapons the Council had never seen before. Inside the station, alarms finally began to sound. Council forces rushed to battle stations, but they were already too late. Runner ships appeared inside their defensive lines, their advanced stealth technology making them seem to materialize from nowhere. "Their main fleet is responding," reported the tactical officer. 800 ships incoming." Stone smiled grimly. "Right on schedule. Launch the Prometheus." The massive human battleship moved forward, revealing why it had been worth 10 years of secret construction. Its hull opened like a flower, exposing weapon systems developed by all 7 Alliance species working together. Human dark matter tech, crystal-mined energy weapons, runner stealth systems, and deep dweller sonic disruptors, all combined into one devastating package. Council ships entering range, called out the weapons officer. "They're charging weapons. Show them what humanity has learned during our imprisonment," Stone ordered. The Prometheus fired. Beams of pure dark matter cut through space, creating temporary gaps in reality itself. Council ships found their energy shields useless against weapons that bypassed normal space. Crystal mine beams followed through the gaps, striking with perfect accuracy. On the Council command ship, the alien leaders watched in horror as their fleet was torn apart by weapons they didn't understand. Their ship's sensors couldn't lock onto the Alliance vessels. Their shields couldn't stop the strange weapons. Their tactics were useless against an enemy that fought like nothing they'd ever seen. "Status of the barrier control station," Stone asked. "Disabled, sir. Dr. Reed's team is inside. They're uploading the shutdown codes now." Across the galaxy, the quarantine barriers began to flicker and die. Dozens of imprisoned species suddenly found themselves free, and each of them had spent their imprisonment preparing, just as humanity had. The Council Fleet Admiral watched in growing terror as more ships began appearing on his sensors. Not just the Alliance fleet they'd been fighting, but ships from every species they'd imprisoned. Some had been trapped for centuries, building their strength in secret. "Send the message," Stone ordered. On every Council ship and station, screens came to life. Stone's face appeared, his expression stern but calm. "This is Admiral James Stone of the human fleet, speaking for the Alliance of the Abandoned. Your time of judgment is over. Your barriers are down, your prisoners are free, and we are coming." The Council fleet began to retreat, but it was too late. The Alliance ships surrounded them, weapons ready. Years of rage and preparation were about to be unleashed. They're requesting to surrender, the communications officer reported, surprise in her voice. Stone shook his head. No, not yet. They need to understand exactly what they created when they caged us. All ships pressed the attack. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries. The Council fleet, once thought invincible, broke under the combined might of the species they had tried to imprison. Their mighty ships fell to weapons born from desperation and unity. As the Prometheus led the charge through the scattered Council forces, Stone thought back to that day 10 years ago, when they had been judged and abandoned. The Council had feared humanity's potential for violence and innovation. Now they would learn why. The first major strike was a success, but it was only the beginning. The real war was about to begin. Dr. Anna Reed stood in the ancient archives of the Council capital, surrounded by data crystals that contained millions of years of galactic history. After the Alliance's victory at the Barrier Control Station, they had pushed deep into Council space, capturing world after world. But what they found here was more valuable than any military victory. Admiral Stone needs to see this immediately, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Her team of human and alien scientists nodded, already working to secure the data. On the Prometheus, Admiral Stone received the transmission while planning the next phase of the war. As he read through the files, his face grew darker with each passing moment. "Get me a direct line to all Alliance commanders," he ordered. "They need to know what we've discovered." The truth was more terrible than anyone had imagined. The Galactic Council wasn't really in control. They were puppets. Behind them stood the Stellar Union, a species so ancient they had been traveling the stars when humanity's ancestors were still learning to use tools. The holographic display showed the history in stark detail. Every 10,000 years, the Stellar Union would select a group of species to serve as their council, to maintain the illusion of democratic rule. These chosen races would be given advanced technology and told they were protecting galactic peace. But that's not even the worst part, Dr. Reed explained to the gathered Alliance commanders. Look at what happens to the Council species when their term ends. The data showed a pattern repeated dozens of times. When a Council species finished their service, they were quietly quarantined, just like the aggressive species they had helped imprison. The Stellar Union erased their memories of ever being Council members and left them to decay in isolation. "It's all about control," Captain Gray said, studying the records. "The Stellar Union doesn't want any species becoming too powerful. They use the Council to do their dirty work, then dispose of them." But humanity's breakout had disrupted their ancient system. For the first time in millions of years, the Stellar Union's carefully maintained control was breaking down. The quarantined species were free, the Council was in chaos, and their secrets were exposed. Deep in the Council archives, Dr. Reed made another discovery. The Stellar Union had been watching Earth long before the quarantine. They had seen something that terrified them: humanity's ability to unite and adapt in the face of adversity. "They didn't quarantine us because we were too aggressive," she told Stone. "They did it because they saw us as potential liberators. They knew that if humanity ever reached the stars, we would question their system. We would try to free others." Stone laughed bitterly. "So they created exactly what they feared by trying to prevent it." The Alliance fleet regrouped around the Council capital. The Prometheus's sensors detected unusual energy readings from deep within the planet's core. The Stellar Union's main base wasn't in another galaxy or hidden dimension. It was right here, beneath the feet of their Council puppets. All these years, Stone said to his bridge crew, "We thought we were fighting for our freedom from the Council. But we were really fighting against something much older and more dangerous." The Alliance leaders met on Freedom's Point to plan their next move. The Stellar Union's technology was far beyond even their combined capabilities. But they had something the ancient species didn't expect: the desperate innovation of dozens of imprisoned civilizations, all working together. They feared us alone. Gray told the assembled commanders. Let's show them why they should fear us united. The final battle was approaching. The Alliance fleet, now numbering thousands of ships from over 30 freed species, prepared for their greatest challenge. They weren't just fighting for freedom anymore. They were fighting to break a cycle of oppression that had lasted for millions of years. In her lab, Dr. Reed worked with scientists from a dozen species, combining their technologies in ways the Stellar Union had never imagined possible. The ancient race thought they had seen every possible combination of tactics and technology. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The Stellar Union's true form was both beautiful and terrifying. Their ships emerged from beneath the Council capital like rising giants, each one larger than a small moon. They were beams of pure energy contained within crystal ships, their technology so advanced it seemed like magic. All Alliance ships, hold position. Admiral Stone commanded from the Prometheus. The combined fleet of 30 freed species waited in formation, their weapons ready. This was the moment everything had led to. The Stellar Union's leader appeared on every screen across the fleet. Its form shifted like living light as it spoke. You have disrupted the peace we maintained for millions of years. Your rebellion ends now. Stone smiled. Dr. Reed, are you ready? In the Prometheus's engineering bay, Dr. Reed stood before a device that combined technology from every Alliance species. Ready, Admiral. The Union isn't the only one who can play with fundamental forces. The Stellar Union ships fired first, sending beams of pure energy that could tear planets apart. But the Alliance fleet was ready. Human dark matter shields absorbed the energy, while runner stealth fields scattered it harmlessly into space. Crystal mind sensors had mapped every weakness in the Union's supposedly perfect ships. Launch Operation Unity, Stone ordered. The Alliance fleet moved as one. Ships from 30 different species, each contributing their unique strengths to a battle plan 10 years in the making. The Prometheus led the charge, its combined weapons firing in sequences the ancient Union had never seen before. Impossible, the Union leader declared as their first ship fell. Your species are too young, too primitive. That's your mistake, Stone replied. You're so old you've forgotten what it's like to fight for survival. Every ship in our fleet was built by people who had nothing left to lose. The battle raged across the system. Union ships tried to use tactics that had worked for millions of years, but the Alliance forces were unpredictable. Humans provided strategy. Runners handled stealth. Crystal minds managed energy weapons, and each freed species added their own strength to the fight. Dr. Reed's voice came over the command channel. Admiral, the device is ready. Get their ships into position. The Alliance fleet executed a complex dance of battle maneuvers, herding the Union ships into a tight formation. They thought they were winning, pressing their advantage against the seemingly retreating Alliance forces. Now, Doctor, Stone commanded. Reed activated her device. The combined technological knowledge of 30 species, all focused into one moment. Dark matter fields merged with quantum barriers and energy webs. Space itself seemed to twist. The mighty Union ships suddenly found themselves trapped in a web of forces they couldn't break free from. Their energy forms, which had made them seem godlike, now made them vulnerable to the Alliance's combined technologies. You fear chaos, Stone told the Union leader. You fear change. That's why you imprisoned anyone who might disrupt your perfect order. But chaos and change are what drive innovation, what create real unity. The Union ships began to fail, their ancient technology no match for the desperate innovations of their former prisoners. One by one, they fell dark and silent. Surrender, Stone demanded. End this now. The Union leader's form flickered as it realized defeat was inevitable. You don't understand. Without our control, the galaxy will fall into chaos. No, Stone replied. It will be free. Every species will have the chance to grow, to learn, to join the galactic community as equals. Real peace isn't maintained through prison walls. The final Union ship fell silent. Across the galaxy, imprisoned species that hadn't yet been freed found their barriers dissolving. The great deception that had lasted millions of years was over. On Freedom's Point Station, representatives from all the freed species gathered to form a new government. Not one based on control and fear, but on mutual respect and cooperation. Humanity, once judged too aggressive to join galactic society, now helped lead the effort to build a better one. Admiral Stone stood with Dr. Reed, watching the celebration. "They abandoned us," he said quietly, "left us alone in the dark." Reed nodded. "And in doing so, they taught us the most important lesson of all. That true strength comes from unity in the face of adversity." The galaxy was entering a new age. The chains were broken, the ancient oppressors were gone, and the species they had tried to imprison were now stronger than ever. When the galaxy abandoned them, humanity had indeed ignited a warpath. But that path had led not to destruction, but to liberation.